Right, good morning, welcome back and thanks for joining us. Now for today I'm installing a simple replacement clutch to OEM specification. I'm not going aftermarket or upgrade or anything like that. I simply will put some fresh clutch plates in. So I'll soak my friction plates in oil overnight. I'm going to put the new friction plates in, new steel plates in, put the diaphragm spring on, then it's put the cover on. I'm going to put a new clutch cable in it as well because the old one's corroded and horrible. Then it'll be set the clutch adjustment, set the primary chain adjustment, fill it with oil, and then I can sign this job off and move on in the project. I can't stress enough how important it is to soak your new clutch friction plates in oil before you install them. If you don't do that, if you put them in bone dry, the oil level in the clutch is not high enough to wet them properly in use. So you must soak them first before you install them, otherwise you'll burn and scorch and warp them and trash your clutch. That's it. Yes. Right, there we are. That's the clip installed. Very important to make sure that that's perfectly seated in all 8 of the fingers that hold it in. Once it is, unwind the nut, take the pressure off the tool, gently. I just want to ask a quick question as an aside for a minute. A few people have asked why buy an 883 engine? Why not buy a 1200 in the first place? and then go to all the expense of upgrading it? Well, it's very simple. Firstly, 883s in unloved condition are far easier to buy and far cheaper, but also it's all about this front sprocket. This front sprocket on the crank here in an 883, it's smaller. It means the primary is lower geared. So when you put a 1200 top end on it, you get quite a feisty bike. Pretty much like a Buell. I think that's what they do in those. They have an 883 size front sprocket, and also the XR 1200 had an 883 front sprocket, which makes them just a little bit more of a handful and a bit more fun to ride, a little bit more aggressive pulling away than a standard 1200, which is more of a cruiser. Anyway, 1200s are always more money than 883s. I hope that explains it. Right, primary cover. Now, they're a bit of a faff to locate these. You kind of need three hands. You've got a baggy primary chain, which hangs down so far, it's going to contact the tensioner shoe and you won't be able to get the cover straight on in the conventional way. So reach underneath with your hand down here, push the chain up to take it out of the way so the shoe can go underneath it. Then get the cover lined up with the gear shaft and locate it through the hole while you hold that chain like that. So looking down inside now, the gasket may fall off its locating dowels, don't worry. Make sure the chain sits up on top of that shoe. There it is. And look, even as the gasket falls out, it doesn't matter. You see down here, either side, you've got a locating dowel there. Another one at the front. And with your finger on them, line up the casing, and just wiggle it in. And once the casing locates on the dowels, and just temporarily pop a screw in just to hold it. You're going to take that out and put thread lock in it in a minute. But we'll just pop that one in there and that will just hold everything in place just for now. Ready to install the screws now, and I will address the inevitable question, why am I putting these filthy screws back in the engine? Well, I can't get new ones yet. I want to replace these with new ones from the dealer. I've asked about them. They're jolly expensive, but I need them because these are in a horrible state. I just can't get them at the moment. There are supply issues and they're not available right now. So I'm going to put them back in properly, torqued in sequence with thread lock and everything. And as soon as I can get them, I can replace them like for like, one by one. But right now I can't just put random ones in there because they're a specific length, they're imperial, and they've got captive washers on. So they have to be the right ones, OEM from the dealer. And I'll get them in the future and I'll do them all one by one. In fact, on the whole engine, any of them that are in that state. But for now, we'll use these. All right, ready to torque them in now. Sequence is 1 at the top, number 2 at the bottom, then work around the outside in a circle. Straightforward. Torque setting on them is 100 to 120 inch-pounds. That translates in metric to 11.3 to 13.5 Newton meters. So I always like to go in the middle, so I'm going to do these up to 12 Newton meters. Right, new cable, in fact new old cable to me. I've had this in the cupboard a long time. It's 8 inches longer than the cable that was on the bike, but I want that because in the future I'm going to put longer bars on the bike, but not for now. So I've just rerouted it currently, and then it can be hooked up and it can work. And when the time comes and I change the bars, it will be the correct length. Anyway, for now, to connect my new cable to my clutch itself, I need to connect the clutch mechanism. 4 little pieces, all going in order, and then we can set the clutch free play itself. Okay, just throwing the foot peg on because the foot peg on these particular bikes bolts through the periphery of the primary. It literally helps hold the primary on. So I've got an even squeeze all the way around the gasket to make sure it seals. Foot peg needs to be in place. Right, going to put the oil in and then do the clutch adjustment. Before I do that, I just want to make one point. Some people pour the oil through this inspection cover. It's a quart of oil that it takes, but rather than just chucking a quart in and hoping the level's correct, just use your common sense and look, you need the derby cover off. You look down inside, you've got the periphery of your clutch. You see the black diaphragm spring that we put in earlier? Well, where the lip of that is, that's the oil level right there. No higher, no lower. It's got to be there. So don't just dump a whole quart in. Put most of it in, then look, little torch, and get it exactly right, because it may be a little bit less. Right, now to set the clutch adjustment. It's a very simple procedure. You do it every 5,000 miles and you need a little bit of feel for this, and you can develop this feel just with practice. What you've got to do is the central spine, that little tiny shaft that goes through the middle, it's got a slot in it, and you have to turn it until it seats and then turn it back half a turn. I'll show you what I mean. So hold the mechanism in place. I'll put 2 fingers on it myself. Pop a screwdriver in there and just turn it to the left, counterclockwise, until it seats. Now you can feel it distinctly. It's not seating against a hard surface, it's seating against a spring inside. So it doesn't go rock hard, it goes chewy. And you can feel it, and that's where you need a bit of feel. Just do that 5 or 6 times like that. Backwards and forwards, and you'll feel it. There it is, about there. Then turn it back half a turn, and that sets the free play right there. And we take this little nut, which has got 2 flats in it, and we put it nut side in over the 2 flat sides of the shaft. And then it fits, as you can see, into the casing. And that holds everything still so it doesn't move. Right, now you're ready to put your cover on. Make sure that that gasket isn't twisted. It's a square section rubber O-ring and it fits into a little track. I use a smear of grease, as you can see, and it holds it nicely in place while you faff about and get this on. And it is a little bit of a faff because you've got this little recess in the center of the cover which locates into this spring. And it's imperative that that must sit nicely in there and it holds all of your clutch adjustment together. So this little lip at the bottom lines up with the cable. So orientate first. And carefully bring it in and make sure it locates. There it is. You can feel it nicely. Right, final job of the day is to set the chain tension on the primary chain itself. You saw the shoe in the bottom, the little beige plastic runner thing. Well, that adjusts by means of being pushed upwards from underneath because it's on a thread that's attached to the casing. As it pushes upwards, it puts the chain itself under tension. And there must be a given amount of slack. It's in your book, it's 1/2 inch. Now, the simplest way to do it is I use the jaws of a 1/2 inch spanner. It's ever so easy. You can put a tape measure in there, like I've done in previous videos. I've done all this sort of thing before. Or you can actually just hold the open end spanner over the hole itself, the inspection hole, look at the chain with a little screwdriver, lift the chain, and if the chain moves up and down by the span of that 1/2 inch spanner, then that's a 1/2 inch of free play. Ever so straightforward. And once you've got that, by tightening accordingly, then you can leave it there, set the lock nut, and you've done your primary chain tension. So lifting it up, it currently goes way over. So there's far too much slack on that now. So we're going to tighten the tensioner up until that stops there. It doesn't go any further. There it is. There we are. 1/2 inch of movement on the chain. Job done. Okay, there we are. That's the assembly of the clutch, adjusting of the primary chain and setting the clutch adjustment itself. Now, if you're going to do this sort of thing yourself, it's very simple, but you will need a manual. Always get yourself a manual. I've got one. I refer to it all the time. It doesn't matter what sort of genius engineer you are, you'll always need a manual. It's there for settings and specifications and so on. Unless you do this every single day, 8 hours a day, you'll always need some sort of reference. It's the best money you'll ever spend. Buy yourself a manual. Anyway, there we are. I'll leave a link just here at the end in a couple of cards, one to the previous disassembly video of this, and also one to the making of that special tool that will save you a fortune in buying a tool you'll only use once in a blue moon. So there we are. Thank you for watching. Take it easy, ride safe. I'll see you next time.